All right, welcome back to the Move podcast. That sounds different.
I know, right?
There's a couple of different things. One, the name is different. And two, I just said to JB, I said, what are these Madonna-style things we have on our head? I'm so bummed.
Which do you want to talk about first? Did this weird you out, doing the headsets?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
Can I be honest with you why we're doing this?
Yeah.
As you can see, we're in a different location, which we'll dig into in a little bit. And we've pretty extensive travel to get here. And this was a much easier solution for us to get where we're going without dragging an extra 100 pounds and another 2 cases.
Yeah. Well, you touched on it. Here we are. We're on the 30th floor of my buddy's apartment here in Tel Aviv, which as we said last week, the Tour of Italy is spending 3 days here in Israel. Today was the prologue in Jerusalem. Tomorrow the stage finish just down below us. And then the third stage finishes down south. So here we are, this beautiful view of this really pretty city.
I know, and I'm literally, as I look over your shoulder, looking at the sun setting on the Mediterranean. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not where I thought I'd be less than a year ago, where you're like, hey, you want to help me with this podcast?
Yeah, drive your Airstream up to Aspen. Let's see what happens.
Well, we now can probably lay claim to being the most expensive podcast on the planet.
That's right.
Just trying to get here because it's very special, which we'll get into in a second. But you've got to go back. We can't just say, welcome to the Move without addressing that.
Right. So we, and we just kept saying the word more and more, ironically, but this thing started out as a podcast covering a stage race. And just as it evolved over time, we got more and more requests to cover other things, endurance events, Ironman, half Ironmans, 24 Hours of Old Pueblo.
Which those events don't entail stages.
They're not stages.
Right.
And so the Spring Classics are not stages. Mm-hmm. And so
it might be high jumping one day. We don't know.
You never know. You just never know. But and in all of these events, whether it's cycling or triathlon or running or whatever, there's always that moment in the race where there's somebody, male or female, makes the move.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard you do it. When you're watching it, you're calling it. You're
right.
like, that's the move. That's
right.
it. That's one. That's
right.
over.
Yep.
Like you're pretty, and your record's pretty good on that. I should start.
Well, thank you, JB.
I should start tracking that. How often you're correct on that.
Thank you.
Well, you were off a little bit today. You were, calling the move, which is a little bit different from calling it during a normal race.
Yep.
You called it early that the time trial was over. You were a little bit off that time. But
Yeah.
Overall, your track record is pretty good on calling the move.
I have a couple of excuses, if you might just allow me. First of all, I'm jet lagged. We had the hell travel from the deepest, darkest hell ever to get here. We were originally going to fly with our buddy over here. He had a health issue. We were stuck in Miami. Then we had to go to New York, and then we had to buy tickets. It was just...
Let me remind you, I was on my way to Miami to connect with you guys, and you guys took off to New York.
Right.
I landed in Miami, and they're like, yeah, we're in New York.
Yep.
So fly to Tel Aviv.
Yeah. But hey, look, we're here. I mean, we can't lie. I know I fell asleep 3 or 4 times during the prologue. It's not a reflection on cycling, but I couldn't keep my eyes open.
The point is, we went to great effort to be here.
We made it. We couldn't make it to. So the original plan was to broadcast from Jerusalem, but the roads closed there at 9 a.m. this morning, so we didn't land until about noon. Mm-hmm. So this is the best we could do. This is what you get.
We're pretty close.
We're okay,
and we'll be right next to it the next couple of days.
But my second excuse on Tom Dumoulin is I didn't because I thought Rohan Dennis's time would stand. Those events are perfect for him. Obviously, a kid like that gets very motivated for that, not just for a win, but to take the first jersey. And I didn't see Dumoulin doing that. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's only raced 12 days this year before the start of this Tour of Italy, which I think is shockingly low. I think I read somewhere that he had some overtraining issues in the off season. And so he must have just come into the season chill. But Jesus, he wasn't chill today. I mean, actually he does. The cool thing about this big guy is very, very Miguel Indurain-esque, very big rider, tall, heavy, can fly in the time trials, but looks like he's soft pedaling.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
We'll dig more into that because we did get some Watts information on Rohan, and we can kind of compare that because I think that's really interesting. But we're going to back up just a second because this is a very significant Giro d'Italia, and that's a big reason why we were here. If this was starting in Italy, we wouldn't have made this trip, correct?
Right. That's exactly right.
But this is a very, very big deal in the fact that it's, of all the Grand Tours, correct me if I'm wrong, the first to start outside of Europe.
Yep.
Now, some have started in other countries, but it's the logistics of a day trip, right,
yep.
or a road trip. This is a big deal to be outside of Europe for the start of the event.
Yeah, it's a big deal for a lot of reasons. One, this event has always tried, over the years, at least the rumblings were that they would try to, start the race in the United States. And so it was always and widely considered that Washington, D.C. would be the start town or start city for the Giro. Never happened. And I, for the record, I just don't think that's a good idea. This is logistically tough enough. It's made easier or made doable because there's only a 1 hour time difference. But when we say logistics, you talk about the logistics of the riders, but really the logistics of the staff. So the people that have to get equipment here and get, they didn't have cars, which is interesting. We stared at the cars for a while. We thought somehow they got their cars here. Turns out all of those cars are Israeli cars that they've just stickered up and put bike racks on, and so they look like their team car. But this is not easy to move this caravan down here. And then also, I think most importantly, coming to a place that's, it's not exactly controversy free.
Well, on that note, if it's my first time here, and I don't know how many times you've been here prior. I was barely able to get into the country. And so I'm not making this about me. This is about the logistics of, could you bring cars in and those kind of things that in this area of the world, there's a reason that their security is so high on who they allow in. And you mentioned at the very beginning some of our plan changes. It couldn't have looked more shady the way I got set up as a guy who bought a last-minute one-way ticket and is flying into Tel Aviv with a backpack full of gear. I looked real shady. And you
look shady anyways.
They really interrogated me about why I was going to be here. And my point is, when I think about the support staff, you probably, just for these 3 stages, probably can't bring the cars. You can't bring all the things you normally bring. It may have been tougher to bring the same amount of mechanics and soigneurs. And I heard somewhere that they couldn't even bring their own chefs, which sounds like that's just a luxury off the top of your head. But we've talked about that before, about having control of the food you eat and nutrition and those sorts of things.
No, those are things that are normal now in professional cycling. When we first brought a chef to the Tour de France, people thought we were crazy. Look at these arrogant assholes bringing they're going to roll up with a chef, and now it's just commonplace, which is good. It should be. But yeah, it would be normal and natural that you would bring a skeleton crew here. These days, the prologue, and we'll get into the prologue and what it means to individual riders, both how they view themselves and how they view their competition. But it's not, nobody's going to win or lose the Tour of Italy today. And these next 2 days, or you can get away with a skeleton crew. And only one other thing I'll say is maybe it's because it was a Friday. I don't know. It seemed a little thin out there on the course. I would have liked to have seen. Typically, when any event like this goes to a different country, it is just massive, the turnout. Now, tomorrow in Tel Aviv, it being a sort of younger, more of a bumping city, that we might see a different thing. But I was a little disappointed with some of the turnout on the prologue course.
Yeah, and part of that may have been the timing of the ending of what was happening. I know from coming into the city just a little bit earlier, getting word from coming into the city just a little, they're home by the time it's sunset and with their families and powered down, basically. So that may have had a bit to do with it, and part of it is a long-term play. It's the first year with an Israeli cycling team, and so fans show up when they know the stars.
Yeah.
This is brand new.
Right.
The team has only been around a few years. This is the first time they're in a big event like this. Like, it takes time to build that.
Yeah, but you also have the biggest rider in the world here, and Chris Froome.
Right.
Normally that's what. Anyways, we'll see. We'll see.
I was thinking about the Israeli team and the Israeli fans. I mean, I thought in my head back to the 80s when English-speaking and American teams were showing up at the Grand Tours for the first time. There wasn't a huge fan base. I mean, it took time.
Right.
So that's interesting to me. And they want to grow it here.
Yeah. Hey, what's interesting too is which is the reason we could not be in Jerusalem, because they closed the course, all the roads around the course at 9 a.m. this morning. I guess otherwise we probably could have made it there, but they had them closed because the riders were not allowed to pre-ride the course before today. So obviously everybody goes out and rides this morning. A couple notable crashes in pre-rides, right? Which is never a good way to start a 3-week tour. So Chris Froome crashes, Miguel Angel Lopez crashes, and then Sitsu breaks his collarbone. Obviously doesn't start, and his team starts with 7 guys instead of 8.
And again, this comes down to a logistics thing. If this was and again, it wasn't a prologue. I do want to ask you about that. This short time trial, you guys would have done recon, right? But the fact that it's over here, a little bit removed, the guys are racing, season's in full effect, it's not like you can just shoot over to Jerusalem to do recon.
No.
And so they were getting a look at it for the first time today, which is unusual for a Grand Tour.
Yeah. Yeah, normally you have some time, but again, it seemed like a pretty straightforward course. I mean, it was lumpy and undulating, but look, we didn't, aside from the crashes we just spoke about in the pre-rides this morning, I didn't see any crashes during the actual race, which, based on hearing that people were crashing as they were warming up, I thought, oh no, this is going to be, people are going to yard sale all over the place. And we didn't see any as we watched on TV.
So a couple things come into effect with the crashes. Let's talk about Froome second. But, obviously a broken collarbone. Okay, that guy, his Giro is ruined, but it affects a team even more now as they've gone from 9 to 8 team members, which we talked about a lot last year.
Disagree.
And now you lose a guy before you even start.
And you lose a strong guy. You lose a really strong guy, and I don't know and we should know, and we probably could research this. I don't know, and you guys listening at home, you probably tell us the rules, but I don't know the rules on substituting somebody. So, do teams come down here with 9 guys in case somebody falls off in the morning and breaks their collarbone? Probably not.
Well, let me ask you this. You've done the Giro before once. Well, we can talk about that. But all your times of the tour, did you have a extra person there ready to go?
Not that I can recall, but there were times I remember. Peter Farizan was a rider back in the day on Cofidis who crashed going down the start ramp, or went off to the side, broke his collarbone. They allowed, I believe it was Matt White, somebody to come in and sub in, right?
Okay.
But if you're that race started in Liège, Belgium, so somebody's close enough. Get in a car, get here. Like, let's just get a warm body over here, and little tougher when you're downhill or down here and downhill.
But yeah, that's what I was thinking. Again, the logistics of it being outside of Europe come into play. Like, send us a note if you know the rule on substitution. But I'm sure they were in a panic this morning going, oh, my God, we're down to 7 guys.
Yeah. Let's talk about I want to talk about what the prologue means to the favorites. And because people might see the time.
Stage 1, not prologue.
Well, that's true.
And I need clarity on that.
I think it's anything over 9 kilometers, then it cannot be called a prologue. So it has to be called a stage. So now stage 1. but whatever. I'm calling it pro. While you might only see these differences of seconds, and it might be 7 seconds or 12 seconds, or I don't recall exactly what Chris Froome lost. Those are not the types of swings that are going to make or break this race. But trust me, everybody in that race, especially the favorites, are looking at when they get the results tonight, they'll be looking, okay, I'm 21 seconds up on so-and-so, and I got 17 seconds on Froome, or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so just as a checkpoint, and just as a sort of a way to just draw any kind of first blood, it does matter. As opposed to being on the losing side of that, quote unquote losing side. You sit there and you're like, oh my God, am I sharp enough? Am I fit enough? Am I lean enough? Am I strong enough? And Chris Froome's, he's talked a big game, and he's talked about his situation. He's been, I got to give it to him, he's been as open and as transparent as I think he can be. But he's also said that he has an ability to stay really, really focused, and that's not going to distract him. I don't see any way that cannot distract you. It has to.
The media beat down since September.
I mean, we don't live with him, but you can imagine at every bike race he goes to, he steps off the bus. It's just a total shit show. He's got to answer these questions. He doesn't. He's answering the same questions over and over. But then if he's at home, I'd imagine he's spending hours a day dealing with lawyers or dealing with experts or it has to add up.
And then also going down in what we were just talking about a second ago, doing recon earlier today. He went down, and I saw some of the pictures online. I mean, it was some road rash there.
Yeah.
He was cut up. So that has to affect you going into it today, right? You got jitters.
Look, there's no crash that has zero impact. I mean, whether it could be something as simple as if it's on one side, you roll over in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, because you're asleep and you don't know that you're rolling over onto a whole side of road rash. Man, the second you hit it, you're awake. And so then now you have to go back to sleep. It just all these little things add up, and you never know how hard you hit the ground, because if you do, then the potential implication of that is some other structural stuff, or
you wake up in the morning, your neck feels off,
your
everything,
low back or knee.
You never know.
Yeah,
what it entailed. If you want to call that bad luck for Froome going down, doing recon earlier today, he had on your lucky number. Did you catch that?
I did. He's number 181 from 1999. I love that number. I love that.
Little
number.
Clarity for those who don't know. Before that was 99 when you won the Tour the first time.
Yep.
That's when you got that number. Every year after that, you get number one.
If you win, yeah.
If you win, you come back as number one. So
right.
181 is special to you. Froome had it on. It didn't bring him the good luck today.
No. But we'll see. We'll see. Tom Dumoulin looked good for a guy that's only raced 12 days. I can't state it enough. I mean, he must be doing some monster training.
Because usually, leading up to a Grand Tour, you would get a week-long tour in there.
Yeah, so typically
it's tougher for the Giro.
It was obviously tougher because it's 6 weeks earlier. So they're the equivalent of the Dauphiné or Tour of Switzerland is the Tour of Romandy, which a lot of these guys did. So that's the last checkpoint.
What would be a normal amount of race days? That 12.
I know.
I don't have a baseline there.
You're right, and I'm sitting here talking about it like I'm so shocked. Shit,
you were the lay low guy.
Maybe that's normal.
Maybe it is now.
It just seems low. I want that guy in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't have to take a roadside pit stop like he did last year.
No,
at least not yet.
Yeah, no more stopping to go number 2 this year, Tom.
The Dumoulin dump, I think they called it last year. Now, when you saw Rohan Dennis ride, you were like, "That's it. There's your winner." And Dumoulin did take it by what was it at the end, 2 or 3 seconds, right? But you like numbers, and you were like, "Wow." And I don't know where you got the information from, but he averaged 426 watts.
Yep, Rohan averaged 426. We'll get the number from Dumoulin. His will be a lot higher. His will be His will be north of 500. Is
I'm
my
just
suspicion.
thinking, yeah, I mean, for most people, that doesn't mean a lot effort-wise. Like, and I know it's not accurate, and I know you're a get outside guy.
Yep.
But a lot of the indoor cycling tools today have watts on it.
Right.
The average person probably can't hit 426,
Right.
and if you can, it might be for 5 seconds if you're lucky. Like, I know it's just. I'm just throwing that number out. If people want to try it, if you have a stationary bike with watts on it, just try to see how long you could do it. And these guys are doing it for 15 minutes. It's remarkable.
And I don't think this was a course suited for maximum power output. I think it undulated enough that you know those false downhills you just can't. You're spun out. You're not. It's difficult to make a bike, output 400 watts when it's downhill.
I'm starting to laugh in my head because as you mentioned downhill, you were about to jump out of your skin when you saw Froome sit on the top tube in a time trial. Now, we've talked about it literally on mountain descents, but to sit on the top tube for a moment in a TT, you were about to punch the television.
We have to stop talking about it. We have to stop doing it, and we have to stop talking about it.
I like talking about it because it gets you worked up.
It just, something's going to happen. I'm telling you, people, something someday is going to happen, and then nobody's going to do it again.
Who else stood out to you today? Form-wise?
To me, the big winner today, aside from Tom Dumoulin, was Simon Yates. I think he's a punchy, explosive, great climber. And he was, I think, 5th or 6th or 7th, I believe. Mm-hmm. For a kid who's not a specialist and not a big power guy, he clearly showed himself to be a contender.
You mentioned earlier,
and Chris Froome did not look good. I don't.
He's hurting.
Might be the crash in the morning. You have to be realistic about that. But I just think that this stuff has to be on his mind.
You mentioned just a bit ago that people are kind of checking everyone's fitness on a prologue length first stage. Do you go home and start doing the math and go, okay, well that was 9K. Later on, I've got 25K, and I put on 8 seconds here. Do they start doing the math like that? And
you can, but everything changes over the course of 3 weeks. So
and finding your form mid.
Yeah, guys are coming up, guys are going down. That's not a perfect science.
Yeah,
I'm trying to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, and this being a very, very special event, again, along with it being in Israel for the first time, out of Europe for the first time. I'm learning a bit about cycling history as we go, and there was a very, very cool award given out at this event dating back to the World War II era, and you just kind of you come to this part of the world, and you got to give it context. We live in like one of the newest countries on the planet, right? A baby, and you think about the history here, and then you think about World War II and the effect on, and then you think about, obviously, but they gave out an award about looking up and reading about.
Yeah. No, Gino Bartali, who won the Tour of Italy 3 times and won the Tour de France twice, protected a whole family of Jews in Italy during that time when they were all being rounded up and put into concentration camps. He started.
Now keep in mind, this is in his heyday.
Yeah, no,
this was late 30s or during the war.
Yeah, no, he was an active cyclist, and he was, but he harbored an entire family, kept them in his cellar, and then he would pretend to go out for training rides, and ride from point to whatever. Back then they rode huge miles, and he would shuttle notes and little things back and forth to the different. He was
doing a different kind of recon for cyclists.
So the award they gave him is called the Righteous Among the Nations Award. And that sounds like it's kind of a strange name, but it's a big deal here in Israel to be given that. You're honorary citizen.
And of course, this is posthumously. I think he passed away in 2000.
2000.
His granddaughter was here to accept the award for him. But you brought it up to me, and I was reading a couple articles about it. He never talked about harboring this family.
No.
I mean, it would come up, and he just, he didn't talk about it much. I mean, it just speaks volumes about the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we had this discussion the other day with our folks that we were going to be flying down here with, because the consequences are, of that, right? If the Nazis find you giving them shelter, giving them protection, you're all done. So, somebody said to me, well, would you do that? And so you get to this place where you have kids, you have a family, you have a wife, it took a lot of courage for Gino Bartali to do that.
It really is amazing.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll make a film about it someday.
They did make a film.
Did they?
They did.
Okay, now I got something to get on my list here.
I'll tell you. They did. My Italian Secret. That's it, yeah. Directed by Orrin Jacobi. And then narrated by Isabella Rossellini.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very, very cool story.
Yeah.
Well, now here we are. Again, the race is going to come to us from some logistics of not being able to be in Jerusalem for stage one. It's going to come to us, which is exciting. I mean, this is a packed town.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just excited about it for the people here, and talking to a lot of people when I was traveling here. A lot of locals are very excited about it. The country's excited about it. It's a chance to showcase it. I think it's a touristic place for a lot of religious reasons, but a chance to put it on the map for a lot of beauty reasons.
Well, you'll see. I mean, you look out here, Tel Aviv is a huge city. If you saw in Jerusalem today, you saw a city. But as we start to head out, especially on day 3, when they go all the way down south, which just so you know is the longest stage of this tour of Italy, you will not see anything. It is just desert. There's nothing out there.
Wow.
It'll erase all of this that you see behind us. Hey, one thing I did want to point out, because I've never seen this in a grand tour, and I don't think it's ever happened, is that this tour of Italy, probably because of the complications of coming down here, now has 3 rest days instead of 2. So typically, obviously,
Now, do you know where those are going to be placed and how that's going to affect things?
Well, there's one right after here, so they do 3 days.
But it's a travel day too. It's kind of a whip.
It's that's backwards. They need to finish that stage. Of course, it is the longest stage, so maybe it's harder to do a 235 kilometer stage, clean off, get in a plane and fly. But so their rest day is going to be spent, in some, tight airplane flying up there, just
So do they get first class and bring their soigneurs and get massages on the flight?
No.
It's not that sophisticated yet?
Not that I ever saw.
Oh, come on,
man.
You never got a massage on a plane?
No comment. No comment.
Well, welcome back to The Move.
The Move. All one word, baby.
I like it. It's growing on me.
Yeah.
It's growing on me.
I love it.
All right.
And, every day, Tom Dumoulin made the move today. That was the move. That was the move of the day.
Yeah.
And so tomorrow it'll be somebody else. I suspect we'll have I can't get into the prediction game yet, because I gotta get over jet lag and get calibrated on who's who here. But fairly short day tomorrow, 167 kilometers, I think it is. I mean, it's 100 miles only, 1 kilometers, I think it is. I mean, that for the fast.
A little warmer conditions than they're used to, I bet.
It's cooling off. No, it's supposed to drop about 10 or 15 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah. So look forward to day 2.
And that concludes the first day of it being The Move.
That's right. Hey, move on. TheMove.org. No, that's not the URL. You can edit that out.
WeDo.team.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in, y'all.